Honestly, I am just trying to physically recover from the weekend because surviving the last 48 hours was an Olympic sport.
A literal decathlon. I am
Yeah.
exhausted.
Right. The sheer stamina required to just exist as a functioning adult right now is staggering. But welcome back, babes. We love you, we see you, and babes, we hope you all have an amazing weekend.
Truly, we hope you survived.
Because we barely did. But tonight, we are coping and we are drinking palomas. But babes, I have to tell you, we elevated them.
We ascended to a completely different plane of cocktail existence.
Because we added strawberry puree.
Yeah, we did.
I cannot even begin to explain to you the absolute, emotional and psychological shift that occurs when you add a freshly blended fruit puree to a standard drink. I took one sip, and suddenly I felt like I was wrapped in a silk robe, like lounging on a velvet chaise overlooking the Mediterranean.
It is genuinely fascinating from a psychological standpoint, honestly.
Why does the introduction of strawberry instantly make a Tuesday evening feel like a highly exclusive, luxurious event? I am romanticizing my entire life right now based solely on this citrus cocktail aesthetic.
Well, what you're experiencing right now is essentially a microdose of the lipstick effect.
Oh, wait, what is that?
It is a thing in behavioral economics. The lipstick effect happens when the broader world feels chaotic or, financially overwhelming, so consumers start flocking to small, affordable luxuries.
Like high-end lipstick.
Right, or in our case, artisanal fruit puree. It helps you reclaim a sense of control and opulence. Honestly, we accidentally became cocktail chemists tonight, and it fundamentally altered our brain chemistry.
We really did.
I mean, I'm not saying I deserve a James Beard Award for operating a blender and understanding flavor profiles, but I am also not saying it.
Okay, wow.
The way the sharp, acidic bite of the grapefruit seamlessly balances with the ripe, velvet sweetness of the strawberry puree, I mean, it is giving Michelin star.
You are so full of it right now.
It is giving $28 per cocktail at a speakeasy where you need a retinal scan to get in.
Okay, you acting like you personally invented the concept of strawberries is exactly like someone putting a single slice of cucumber into tap water and calling it a luxury wellness spa.
It's basically the same thing.
You literally just pressed a button on a ninja blender. But I will not lie to you, Snark Squad. We are completely delusionally pretending we are rooftop bar people now.
Oh, absolutely.
You know exactly the type of people I mean. The ones who wear unwrinkled linen effortlessly, who never seem to physically sweat even in humidity, and they just swirl their pink drinks while looking down at the sparkling city skyline with mild indifference.
That is our precise energy right now.
Summer drink energy has fully possessed my soul, and I refuse to be humble.
It is a delusion, yes, but it is a highly necessary delusion. And honestly, we need this level of elevated, isolated comfort after the absolute psychological warfare we endured in the wild earlier this evening.
Oh my gosh, don't even remind me.
Snark Squad, please listen to me very carefully. If you take away anything from us today, let it be this. Do not, under any circumstances, ever go out to a group dinner with 7 dentists.
It is absolute, unadulterated social chaos. We went out this evening to catch up with a few friends. Beautiful restaurant. Lovely dim ambiance. We sit down, and babes, getting 7 dental professionals at one long table is a catastrophic mistake.
It really is.
It is a loud, interrupting, completely unhinged social experiment.
If we analytically break down the sociology of insular professional groups, it actually makes total sense.
Really?
Yeah, because dentists operate in one of the most highly stressful, physically isolated, and heavily scrutinized microenvironments in the medical field. Their entire profession is based on talking to people who physically cannot respond.
Oh, because their mouths are wedged open.
Exactly. So when you release them from their sterile clinics and put them together in a room with alcohol, you just violently talk over each other. It was competitive storytelling at its absolute worst.
I have never heard so much incredibly niche, impenetrable dental office jargon in my entire life.
They use jargon as a social moat to keep the rest of us out. Who jokes about composite resin curing times?
I literally did not understand a single word.
Why was the whole table crying laughing about a highly specific botched root canal from 2019? I felt like I was trapped in an alternate dimension where enamel density is an actual personality trait.
They completely took over the entire restaurant. The sheer volume of the group energy was so loud, I was emotionally shrinking into my seat, apologizing to the waiters with my eyes.
I saw you do that.
I couldn't help it. But at the exact same time, I was having this deeply profound emotional moment.
Of course you were.
I was. I was looking around the table, watching them all scream with laughter about like tartar buildup or whatever, and I just felt this huge crashing wave of nostalgia.
Over tartar.
No, over the friendship. Babes, adult friendships are so incredibly hard to maintain. Just getting 9 adults in a room at the same exact time without someone canceling because of a Zoom meeting or a tired toddler is a logistical miracle.
I mean, statistically, yes, it is rare.
So even though they were being absolute social terrors, I felt weirdly grateful. Like, oh, look at these loud, chaotic, teeth-obsessed monsters. I genuinely love them.
That is a very sweet, a deeply sentimental perspective, and I felt absolutely none of that.
Naturally.
I was analytically breaking down how entirely socially unaware they are in the wild and plotting the most efficient exit strategy. But sitting there, watching them aggressively fight over how to split the check, randomly triggered a repressed, dark memory for me.
Oh, no.
A horrific college dinner nightmare that perfectly illustrates why the social contract of group dining is inherently broken. I haven't thought about this in years, and my blood pressure is spiking just bringing it up.
Wait, this reminds me of the behavioral economics study I read recently about how group dining mathematically guarantees everyone at the table overspends. It is fascinating what happened because I know your college stories always involve some sort of deep financial trauma.
It does perfectly tie into behavioral economics. Snark Squad. Picture this. It is 2018. We are at a mid-tier, incredibly mediocre Italian chain restaurant.
Oh, I can picture the breadsticks.
There are 8 of us at a booth. We have been there for 2 hours. The bill finally arrives in that little black leather booklet. It is time to split it. And one friend, let's call him the human embodiment of a migraine, looks at the itemized receipt,
Uh-oh.
looks around the table at the rest of us, and loudly announces, I only ordered a tap water and a side salad. I'm not splitting this evenly.
Oh my God.
Absolute scorched earth warfare erupted at the table.
Wait. Let's emotionally unpack the reality of this before we bring down the hammer of judgment.
The hammer is already down.
But on one hand, when you are in college, you were devastatingly broke. Babes, remember scraping together actual quarters from the couch cushions just to run a load of laundry?
Barely.
The anxiety of looking at a menu and knowing you only have $12 to your name is real. If he literally only had a side salad and tap water and the rest of you were ordering pitchers of sugary sangria and 3-course chicken parmesan meals, is it actually fair to make him subsidize your feast?
I will judge the water-ordering friend until the day I die, and I will defend my stance with game theory.
Game theory. Over a side salad.
Yes. It is called the unscrupulous diner's dilemma. It is a classic problem where a group decides to split a bill equally before ordering. Because the cost of any expensive item is distributed among everyone, each person has an incentive to order a more expensive meal than they would if they were paying individually.
Right, which drives the total bill up exponentially.
Exactly. The only way the system works is if everyone buys into the social contract. We are adults. Well, we were almost adults. Group dinners are not just about caloric intake. They are a social tax.
A social tax.
You do not go to a group birthday dinner to act as an independent financial auditor. If you sit at the table, you absorb the vibe, you take up the physical space, you monopolize the conversation, you split the bill.
I mean, I hear you, but
Does ordering one cheap item exempt someone from the social contract of dining out? No. Group dinners become literal financial warfare because of people who weaponize their side salads. I just pay the bill for the entire table. I will throw my credit card at the waiter like a ninja star the second they walk by, just to avoid that excruciating conversation.
you just want to flex your disposable income.
Maybe a little.
But honestly, while I understand the game theory aspect, I still try to see the human side. It is the sheer anxiety of the bill arriving that gets to me. We have all felt that pit in our stomachs. Which brings us seamlessly to the most stressful, broken aspect of modern dining. I have to ask the table, right here, right now. Do we actually believe in tipping culture anymore?
No. Categorically, absolutely not.
Honestly, no.
It is an archaic, deeply flawed system. If we look at the actual history of the tipped minimum wage in this country, it is infuriating. It really took off post-Civil War when the Pullman Company hired newly freed slaves as porters, but refused to pay them a base wage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, forcing them to rely entirely on the generosity of wealthy white passengers for tips. The entire system was literally designed to offload the financial responsibility of paying a living wage from the massive corporate employer directly onto the individual consumer.
That's horrible.
It's an absurd, historically exploitative model.
Yeah.
We would both absolutely rather see workers just get paid a proper, thriving wage directly by their employers with the cost baked into the menu price like they do in Europe.
Exactly. The honest truth is it feels so foundationally broken, and this is a massive but.
I know where you're going with this.
Do we still tip? Absolutely yes. Always 20% or more, without question. Because it is not the server's fault that the economic system is trash. They're just trying to pay their rent.
Right.
But babes, the internal catastrophic spiral I go into when I am standing at a counter and the barista flips that little white iPad screen around.
Ah, yes. The iPad of judgment. The digital guillotine.
It is localized psychological pressure projected onto a digital screen. When the iPad flips around and staring back at you is a 25%, 30%, or even a 35% default option for someone who literally just handed you a prepackaged blueberry muffin out of a glass case.
It is wild.
How do you not emotionally crumble? The tipping guilt is eating me alive from the inside out. I feel deeply, viscerally awkward during the payment process every single time.
You do tense up visibly.
I panic, I hold my breath, I blindly hit 25%, and I run away clutching my $9 black coffee like I just robbed a bank.
It is a brilliantly designed piece of psychological warfare. The interface is entirely built on social conformity and the avoidance of public shame.
Yes, the shame.
They hand you the terminal, they maintain intense, unblinking eye contact. The line of 6 people behind you is staring at the back of your head, and they wait. And somehow in the last 5 years, tipping culture mutated from a gratuity for extensive table service into everyone's baseline moral responsibility for all transactions.
It is everywhere now.
You are no longer just buying a coffee, you are being administered a morality test on your empathy for the working class, and you have exactly 3 seconds to pass it. I resent the entire mechanism of the system, but I still tip heavily every time because I cannot mentally handle the perceived judgment. I am a victim of the screen.
We are so easily manipulated. It is terrifying. And speaking of being easily manipulated, influenced, and desperately needing help, Snark Squad, we have an active emergency.
The code red.
I'm calling an emergency meeting of the babes. We officially need help because our holy grail ride-or-die aquaphor is no longer working.
It has deeply betrayed us. The petroleum jelly lies have finally caught up to our skin barrier.
I am emotionally devastated. Babes, having perpetually dry lips as a full-grown adult is actually ruining my quality of life. It occupies so much of my mental energy.
It is exhausting.
Adult skincare has morphed from a fun self-care hobby into a full-time, exhausting, highly expensive, unpaid job. I carry chapstick absolutely everywhere like it is a medical device.
You an arsenal?
I do. I have a car chapstick in the center console. I have a purse chapstick. I have a bedside table chapstick. I have a bathroom sink chapstick. And as of this week, none of them are working. I am begging you, Snark Squad, flood the comments right now.
Please.
We need genuine chapstick recommendations. We need overnight lip mask suggestions. We need lip oil obsessions that actually penetrate the cellular level and work. Because I am so easily influenced, I am desperately ready to drop $100 on whatever aesthetic lip product is trending on TikTok right now. I cannot live like this anymore.
See, this is exactly where the beauty industry traps you. If we look at the actual biology of human lips, they do not have sebaceous glands. Yeah, they cannot produce their own oil. So they are entirely dependent on you hydrating from the inside out and protecting them from the outside. But I am highly, highly suspicious of modern beauty marketing.
Of course you are.
These luxury lip masks that cost $40 a pop are literally just glorified occlusives. They are essentially Vaseline with a hint of artificial berry flavoring poured into a heavy frosted glass jar to trick your brain into perceiving luxury.
But the jars are so pretty.
It is a scam designed to prey on your desperation and the biological vulnerability of your face. But, that being said, if you look me in the eye right now and tell me a $60 peptide lip oil will fix my life and make me look like a supermodel, I will absolutely input my credit card information tonight. I fully admit I am a hypocrite and I am easily influenced by heavy packaging.
You are such a massive hypocrite, and I love it. We are both victims of the aesthetic, and transitioning perfectly from the beauty marketing scams of $40 chapstick to the absolute, unadulterated scam of reality television friendships.
Oh, here we go.
Babes, we have to talk about this week's episode of Belle Collective Birmingham. Season 1, Episode 7, we are diving into the abyss.
Appropriately and ominously titled The Last Supper. The amount of broken social contracts in this single hour of television is enough to sustain a team of clinical psychologists for a decade.
Oh my gosh, I have so many swirling feelings. I've been spiraling about this all weekend. The Snark squad needs to grab their elevated strawberry palomas right now because we are going all the way in.
Buckle up.
Let's start with Tiffany and this absolute unmitigated mess of a launch party for her new fashion line, the Choosing line.
First of all, let's look at the genesis of this entire brand because it is so incredibly tragic to me. Tiffany stands up in front of a room full of all her closest friends, family, and cameras, and she explains the origin story of the Choosing line.
I was cringing so hard.
She says she recently asked her husband a very vulnerable question. She asked, "What made you just know that you love me? What kind of feelings did you get?" And his response, which she directly quoted to the room, was, "I just made a decision, the decision to choose you."
Babes, had to pause the TV. When she stood there and admitted that was the answer I didn't want, my heart physically broke for her.
It was rough.
How do you take a moment where your partner gives you the most unromantic, clinical, robotic, borderline HR-approved answer possible, and then decide to build an entire retail fashion brand around it?
It is baffling.
It is like he sat her down and said, "I evaluated the local dating metrics, ran a cost-benefit analysis, and you were the optimal low-risk choice for a merger." And she replied, "Wow, I'm going to put that exact sentiment on a polyblend t-shirt."
It is the literal definition of coping mechanism couture. We see this all the time in reality television, right?
Yeah.
The desperate need to commodify personal trauma or marital dissatisfaction to regain a sense of agency.
Yeah, exactly.
She took a deeply unfulfilling, cold marital interaction and tried to monetize it to prove it had value. But let's analytically break down the actual launch event, because as a business endeavor, it was a complete and utter disaster. The Dunning-Kruger effect was on full display.
Oh, the party itself was a mess.
She has this party, and she tells the crowd, "I need honesty. I need feedback," which is rule number one of preserving your ego in business. Never, ever ask for raw, honest feedback at a vanity party meant specifically to celebrate you.
The attendees were brutal. They took her request for honesty and weaponized it. They did not hold back a single thought.
Well, let's look at the logistical setup. You walk into this event, and she's trying to sell these garments using a printed QR code.
Yeah.
She tells the crowd, "I'm going to give you the QR code so you can go ahead and spend your money, honey."
So cringe.
Let me explain basic consumer friction to you. If you invite me to what is supposed to be a luxury brand launch party, do not make me pull out my iPhone, scan a crumpled piece of paper taped to a cocktail table, and try to navigate a clunky, unoptimized mobile site just to buy a t-shirt. The execution stripped away any illusion of prestige.
And the actual feedback from the crowd, someone literally looked at the shirts hanging on the rack, looked Tiffany in the face, and told her she needs to get away from the print because it looks like a "let's go on a family vacation, everybody get a t-shirt" vibe.
Devastating.
I screamed at my television. That is the ultimate devastating read. Family reunion, airbrush, matching boardwalk, t-shirt energy.
It's so accurate, though.
And then, babes, the most crushing moment of the entire night, someone is explicitly asked how much they would spend on the shirt in its current iteration. They look at the garment, they look her dead in the eye, and they say, $5.
From an economic standpoint of supply, demand, and perceived value, it was a completely fair valuation.
But $5.
It looked like a basic high-volume screen print on a cheap cotton blend. They rightly told her that if she wants to charge premium prices, she needs to get into actual embroidery, high-quality stitching, broader color choices, and distinct silhouettes.
I know, but still.
But you have to sit back and appreciate the sheer audacity of inviting your closest circle to a launch party, handing them a microphone, and them flat out telling you your life's work belongs in a dollar bin at a discount store.
But wait, isn't it kind of heartbreaking from an emotional standpoint? If I threw a launch party for a project that I poured my soul into, and my best friends publicly told me they would only pay $5 for my effort, I would literally dissolve into tears on the floor.
You definitely would.
I would pack up my little QR codes, I would delete my social media, and I would move to a different state in the dead of night. Tiffany held her composure much better than I would have, but you could see the light leave her eyes. She was crushed.
She brought it entirely on herself by asking for honesty when she really just wanted validation. It's a classic miscalculation. But let's pivot from Tiffany's failing t-shirt empire to someone else whose life is currently crumbling under the immense weight of terrible, reality-distorting decisions. FunMe.
Oh, FunMe. Snark Squad. The scene with FunMe and her husband Sam had me physically pacing my living room. The tension was suffocating.
It was
So Sam visits Funmi, and he walks in bringing her a designer purse and a box of chocolate. And Funmi, to her absolute credit, is immediately highly suspicious.
as you should be.
She looks at him and says, "You're not about to bribe me into doing anything." Usually when he pulls out things like that, he has bad news.
And boy, did he deliver. He drops the absolute bomb that he is giving her exactly 21 days to sell their massive house, or they're pulling it off the market entirely.
21 days.
Now, let's analytically break down the reality of their situation. They have had over 30 showings of this property. 30. Do you know how physically and mentally exhausting it is to keep a lived-in house in pristine, museum-quality condition for 30 different groups of strangers to walk through, open your closets, and judge your baseboards?
I would lose my mind.
But despite all that foot traffic, they keep getting relentlessly lowballed on the offers.
This is where the conversation gets really heavy and steps out of the reality TV bubble, babe. Because Sam sits down and explicitly explains why he believes they're getting continuously lowballed.
Yeah, this was intense.
He says they are a black family living in a predominantly white neighborhood within a predominantly white school system, and he states that he firmly believes they are getting a deliberate reduction on these contracts because of racial bias from the buyers and appraisers.
And to be completely objective and impartial to the sources provided, Sam is pointing to a very well-documented systemic issue. He backs up his exhaustion by sharing a horrific, deeply personal trauma they went through back in 2020. He explains that they found a house they loved, put in an offer, the offer was officially accepted, they dropped off the earnest money, and literally 1 hour later, the owner backed out and said they didn't want to sell to them anymore.
That is just sick.
Sam looks at Funmi and says, it does not matter how well-dressed you are, how well-spoken, they have hate in their heart. Regardless of anyone's political stance, as viewers, we have to recognize that this is Sam's lived reality.
Absolutely.
That is a devastating, soul-crushing experience to face, and you can entirely understand why Sam is emotionally depleted, wants to just pull the plug on the stress and stay in the home they already own. The psychological toll of that kind of repeated rejection is massive.
It is so incredibly painful to watch a partner express that level of defeat. And you would think that Funmi, hearing her husband express this deep exhaustion and trauma, would have a moment of profound empathy.
You would think.
You would think she would hold his hand and say, "You're right, our peace is more important than a new house." But no, Funmi absolutely refuses to budge.
She doubled down.
She digs her heels in and says, "You're not trying to see my point. This house situation has to change." And then, babes, she executes the most unhinged physical reaction I have ever witnessed on television.
It was amazing.
She gets furious. She literally grabs her ceramic bowl of soup, points at him, says, "You're not getting soup," and literally runs away. She said, "I'm a runner. I'm a track star. Anytime you start talking rubbish, I'm going to take my stuff and I'm just going to leave."
I will say, the sheer physics and logistics of sprinting away in anger while successfully balancing a bowl of hot liquid without spilling it is an Olympic-level feat. I respect the core strength.
I mean, true.
But her behavior is deeply, fundamentally problematic.
Okay.
And the Snark squad on Reddit is absolutely tearing her apart for it, and rightfully so.
I was up until 2 in the morning reading those Reddit threads.
Yeah.
The fans are entirely exhausted by her lack of empathy. They are calling it out so clearly.
Let's read the room directly from the sources. User Coolchick Perspective said, "Funmi stressing her husband out about a bigger house when the one she's currently living in is just fine. Funmi gonna go broke trying to keep up with Stormy."
Yep.
And overall, Badger6136 pointed out the pure financial delusion. He said it 50 times, 50 different ways, that they do not have that kind of money, faking it until she makes it.
Yes. And Happy Cat Princess made the most brilliantly practical point ever. She said, "Who the hell wants to vacuum and mop and knock down cobwebs in a house that big? Or clean all those toilets that might seldom be used?"
Very fair question.
Babes, Reddit is calling her out for textbook conspicuous consumption. It is Thorstein Veblen's economic theory playing out in real time on Bravo. Why do you need an entire secondary wing of a house that you don't even physically walk into just to signal to your reality TV castmates that you have it?
Exactly. Conspicuous consumption is buying luxury goods or services specifically to publicly display economic power, rather than to fulfill an actual need. It is purely to keep up with the Joneses, or in this specific case, keeping up with Stormy.
Right.
Speaking of which, the Reddit thread also brought up that incredibly pretentious caviar incident from a previous episode that perfectly highlights this. User NoDesk602 said, Fund me making them try caviar like she is exposing the other ladies to something annoyed me. Her trying to keep up with the Joneses while treating her husband like a transaction isn't cute.
Babes, trying to force your grown adult friends to eat caviar as if you are their spiritual guide to high society is so deeply, painfully cringe. It is just fish eggs.
It really is.
If they want it, they will go to a restaurant and buy it. Is Funme just trapped in this cycle of lifestyle creep, desperately trying to match Stormy's aesthetic? And is it going to absolutely ruin her marriage? Because Sam looked so tired. When she asked for a massive pool in the backyard and said it has to make sense, he just looked at her with total defeat. It is hard to watch.
She is going to completely bankrupt their emotional connection in exchange for an extra 1,000 square feet of unused living space. It is a tragedy of misplaced priorities playing out in real time. But speaking of absolute tragedies, let's move to what has to be the most highly inappropriate, socially bankrupt scene of perhaps the entire television season, the Civil Rights Museum mess.
I have full-body, visceral, secondhand embarrassment just thinking about this segment. I wanted to crawl under my sofa.
That's awful.
Babes, this was supposed to be a profound, educational, historical family outing. Stormy and her husband take their young son to the Civil Rights Institute in Birmingham. And for context, this is located directly across the street from the 16th Street Baptist Church.
We need to properly contextualize this because the show explicitly states the history. This is the historic church where 4 innocent little girls were killed in a horrific racist bombing in 1963. It is sacred, heavily traumatic, intensely important historical ground.
Yes, absolutely.
The museum itself is dedicated to the marches, the Children's Crusade, and the sheer overwhelming weight of the civil rights movement in what was arguably the most violently segregated place in America at the time. The gravity of this location cannot be overstated.
The history is palpable. You should be whispering. You should be quietly reflecting on the immense, unimaginable sacrifices made by the people who stood exactly where you were standing. But what do Stormy and Tiffany do?
They ruin it.
Tiffany shows up outside the museum, and they proceed to have a tense, aggressive, incredibly awkward confrontation right on the public sidewalk, fighting about being kicked out of a house over mops and brooms.
It is the absolute pinnacle of reality television ego and delusion. You are standing outside a monument dedicated to the fight for basic human rights and civil liberties, and you decide this is the appropriate venue to aggressively interrogate an acquaintance about a trivial dinner party slight.
I couldn't believe it.
Tiffany literally walks up, interrupts a family outing, and asks Stormy if she still thought kicking her out was funny. And Stormy, without missing a single beat, looks at her with ice in her veins and says yes.
The audacity, just a cold, brutal, unapologetic yes. And Tiffany is desperately trying to orchestrate this reality TV gotcha moment, saying, moving forward, when you are offended, come to me, don't do nothing stupid.
Just zero self-awareness.
And Stormy's husband is just standing there in the background trying to teach his young son about the Children's Crusade of 1963. Babes, you are surrounded by the most impactful, somber history in American culture, and you are acting like you are fighting in the parking lot of a local mall. I was literally screaming at the television.
Analytically, Tiffany's approach was a completely calculated move for the cameras, but she picked the absolute worst possible geographical location to execute it. Even her own cousin or friend later points out in the episode, that wasn't a place for that type of conversation to be had.
Oh, thank goodness someone said it.
They said, all this historical stuff out here, and y'all can find nothing better to talk about. It was a staggering lack of spatial and historical awareness. It was deeply uncomfortable. But in terms of narrative structure, it perfectly sets the stage for the chaotic climax of the episode.
Oh, yes.
Stormy's apology dinner, which she aggressively, and without a hint of irony, branded as the Last Supper.
The sheer aesthetic of this dinner, babes, let's really paint the picture. Stormy rents out an entire venue, and she forces the guests to walk through this incredibly dark, moody, narrow tunnel to get to the table.
Very normal behavior.
Stormy says in her confessional that she wanted them to walk into oblivion, and that the vibe could read either sinister or romantic. Let me tell you right now, if I am going to a supposed apology dinner and the host forces me to walk through a sinister, pitch-black tunnel that feels like a haunted house, I am turning around, calling an Uber, and going to a drive-thru.
I would already be gone.
I am not entering a horror movie set for a free plate of chicken.
The production design was very exclusive cult initiation. It was designed to disorient the guests before they even sat down. They finally get to the room, and there's a literal, singular long table explicitly mimicking the Last Supper.
Oh, with the bread.
Yes, they have edible names printed directly onto the bread at each place setting. Let's just pause and briefly appreciate the commitment to customized carbs. But the tension in the room is suffocatingly thick. The official episode synopsis even notes that this is where long brewing betrayals are brought to light and cold truths are exposed.
So the dinner starts, and Stormy actually stands up and genuinely apologizes to Tiffany. She looks at her and says she doesn't think she's a B word or an H word, which, the bar for respect is currently in hell, but we love to see a modicum of growth.
Fairly.
And Tiffany accepts it, but she does it in the most hyper-analytical Tiffany way possible. She literally says to the table, "It's very important for me to receive her apology, but me receiving an apology does not take away the character traits that you have displayed. So now I just watch character and see if your character match up with the apology. I'd be a fool to trust you this fast."
I have to say, that is actually a remarkably healthy, highly analytical boundary to set. She is essentially saying, I hear your words, but words are cheap. I am waiting for your actions to align with your PR spin.
Wow, you actually agree with her.
I deeply respected Tiffany in that exact moment. It was a masterclass in not letting someone off the hook just because they said sorry on camera. But of course, the piece of the table lasts for roughly 3 seconds before absolute primal chaos erupts on the complete opposite side of the room.
The Oompa Loompa fight? Babes, it came completely out of nowhere. Amber and Kala just randomly get into it. Amber keeps poking at Kala, making these unprompted short jokes.
It was so uncalled for.
She asks, "How's the weather down there?" And then literally, loudly calls her an Oompa Loompa. Kala absolutely loses her mind, and rightfully so. She looks at Amber with pure rage and says, "If you do one more teeny-weeny polka dot bikini short joke, oh Lord, I'm a ride up on you like her cousin rode up on you."
The immediate threat of physical violence at a dinner explicitly named after a biblical event centered on forgiveness is it is peak cinema.
It really is.
It is the juxtaposition of high aesthetic and low behavior. Amber clearly means it jokingly, but she entirely lacks the social awareness to read the temperature of the room. Kola does not find it funny at all. And the sheer chaos of this screaming match happening right after Stormy is desperately trying to set a tone of grace, healing, and humility is incredible television.
But wait, babes, you think that's the peak of the madness? It gets so much worse.
It always does.
Because Stormy decides it is time for her ultimate surprise. She stands up and says, "Service came up a lot in the debacle of the mop, so I did want to put together something tonight for us to be able to actually show service to one another." And she signals the staff, and they bring out a literal foot washing station.
I need to take a deep, centering breath before we dissect the mechanics of this. She explicitly references the biblical story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet at the Last Supper to demonstrate extreme humility and service.
Yes.
And she attempts to enforce this highly intimate, deeply uncomfortable ritual on a group of reality television stars who are currently actively screaming at each other. Let's analyze this mechanically. This isn't just weird. It is a textbook Machiavellian power move.
The girls absolutely lose their minds. The pure panic that sets in across the table. Babes, they start screaming in protest. Someone yells out in terror, "I haven't gotten a pedicure in months."
A valid concern.
Funmi gets highly defensive, crosses her arms, and says culturally it's just not something Nigerians do. You have to get to know the person before you can become so intimate. Another girl screams at the top of her lungs, "My feet are for my man."
It was a magnificent disaster. Trying to force these highly image-conscious women to expose their bare, potentially unpedicured feet on high-definition television lighting is basically a violation of the Geneva Conventions.
Honestly true.
Funmi's cultural defense was actually a fascinating deflection, but, deep down, half of them were just utterly terrified of their ashy heels being immortalized on camera forever.
Trying to force your reality TV castmates who you are actively feuding with to let you wash their feet in a public setting is exactly like a CEO taking a highly publicized pay cut to $1 while simultaneously laying off 1,000 employees.
That is a great analogy.
It is a localized act of fake humility designed specifically to make you immune to criticism while maintaining absolute control over the room. It is psychological torture. Why would you ever do that to your friends?
Because Stormy is a master manipulator of aesthetics and power dynamics. By forcing them into a position where she is washing their feet, she places herself in the ultimate position of the humble, untouchable savior.
Yes.
She forces vulnerability onto them while cloaking herself in righteousness. It makes it literally impossible for any of them to attack or critique her without looking like ungrateful villains. It is a brilliant, terrifying PR move, masquerading as grace.
And just when you think they survived the trauma of the feet, she brings out the blindfolds.
Ah, yes. the sensory deprivation portion of the evening. Walk by faith, not by sight.
She actually forces them to put on thick silk blindfolds in a dark, sinister room, surrounded by people they're currently engaged in screaming matches with. One of the girls rightly points out, "My faith is in the Lord, not in some people."
Very wise.
They finally take the blindfolds off, and someone is yelling across the room, "She rubbing on my booty, she rubbing on my booty." Babes, it was utter delusion, sensory chaos, and the complete collapse of social boundaries. I was hyperventilating on my couch.
It was a beautiful structural disaster, which transitions us perfectly into our integrated segments for the evening. Let's take all this madness and apply it to our real lives.
Yes, let's do it.
Segment 1. Who would cause the most chaos at dinner? Snark Squad. We debated this intensely on the drive home. If we took one single character from Belle Collective and dropped them into that chaotic dinner with the 7 dentists we went to tonight, who would absolutely ruin the night the fastest?
Oh, this is so incredibly easy. It has to be Stormy. Stormy would sit down, realize within 3 minutes that the dentists are talking over her and she doesn't understand their composite resin jokes, and she would immediately demand a full foot washing station in the middle of the restaurant to reestablish dominance.
You think so?
Absolutely. She would bring out the ceramic bowls, she would dim the ambient lighting, and she would force 7 highly educated medical professionals to take off their loafers and walk by faith. The restaurant manager would absolutely have to call the police.
I completely and fundamentally disagree with you. The answer is unequivocally Tiffany. Yes. Tiffany would look at a table of 7 high-income medical professionals and immediately sense a captive, lucrative market. She would stand up, interrupt the tragic root canal stories, and start aggressively passing around a crumpled piece of copy paper with a QR code printed on it.
Oh my gosh, she would.
She would try to sell them $5 choosing line t-shirts in the middle of the calamari appetizers. She would ask for their raw, honest feedback. The dentist would give her an analytical, brutal breakdown of why the font choices are poor, and she would start openly weeping into the breadbasket. Total, uncontrollable chaos.
Okay, wait. Looking at the economics of that is actually a terrifyingly accurate read. Babes, let's move to segment 2, most socially awkward moment. We had so many uncomfortable scenes to choose for in this episode, but we need to officially debate the absolute hardest to watch interaction.
There's so many.
Was it Fun Me, snatching the hot soup and doing a 40-yard dash? Was it the confrontation outside the historic Civil Rights Museum? Or the blindfolded booty rubbing?
Analytically speaking, the Civil Rights Museum fight is the most objectively offensive due to the historical context. But for pure, visceral, cringe-inducing social awkwardness, it absolutely has to be the soup snatching.
You really think so?
Yes. Fummy's husband is sitting there pouring his heart out about deep racial trauma and suffocating financial stress, and she just grabs a bowl of hot broth and sprints out the door yelling, "I'm a track star."
The complete and total disconnect from the emotional reality of that moment is breathtaking. It is the textbook definition of socially awkward.
See, I disagree with you again. I think we are looking at this differently. For me, it is the blindfolded booty rubbing.
Really?
Yes. Because you have these women at a gorgeous, highly produced dinner, dressed to the nines in these beautiful, expensive gowns, and suddenly they have silk masks over their eyes, stumbling blindly around a dark room, screaming in panic about being touched inappropriately. It went from high-class, curated elegance to a chaotic college frat hazing ritual in 3 seconds. I was watching it through my fingers, babes. Fair point. The sheer whiplash of tone was severe. Let's move to segment 3. Could we solve the mystery? Let's spiral about whether we would actually survive being detectives in an interrogation room, because there is an unresolved plot point in this episode that is deeply bothering me.
Okay.
The mystery, were Stormy's tears at the fire pit sincere? Or was it a completely calculated PR move to manipulate the group dynamics?
Okay, so let me give context for the Snark Squad. Earlier in the episode, the other Bells were talking about how the night before, Stormy was crying uncontrollably by the fire pit, talking about her tough childhood, desperately trying to connect.
Right.
And one of the girls immediately calls it out and says, "I don't think the tears was sincere. I think she was trying to connect so they won't look at her differently." Babes, I am far too emotionally empathetic to be a detective. I would crack instantly in the interrogation room.
You would fold like a lawn chair.
Yeah, I would. If someone sits across from me and starts crying about their childhood, I am immediately hugging them, crying with them, and giving them all the money in my wallet. But you would make them cry harder. You would break them.
I would absolutely break her in an interrogation room. I would look purely at the timeline. She coldly kicks a friend out of her house, the entire group rightly turns on her, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, she is weeping by a fire pit about her childhood trauma.
I mean, it is
It
suspicious.
is textbook deflection. It is a classic PR crisis management strategy designed to elicit sympathy. I do not buy the tears for a single solitary second. It was a highly calculated move to garner emotional leverage before she executed the ultimate foot-washing power play.
I would,
Be a fantastic, ruthless detective. You would be a terrible one.
I would just be the good cop. You are permanently the mean cop. Okay, let's tie this entire chaotic spiral together with our final segment. Segment 4, luxury chapstick rankings. Because we have been talking about fake aesthetics, forced luxury, and Fun Me's intense caviar vibe all night, babes, let's tie this back to our very real chapstick emergency. Let's rank the absurdly expensive beauty products for lips that we know deep down in our souls are a complete scientific scam, but we would absolutely still buy them anyway.
Oh, this is my absolute favorite game. Rank number 3, the $24 Rhode Peptide Lip Treatment. Is it basically just glorified sticky lip gloss?
Yes.
Does the sleek gray packaging make me feel like a minimalist architectural genius who has her life entirely together?
Good.
Also, yes. It is a scam that I willingly and happily participate in.
I love that one. Rank number 2, the Laneige Lip Sleeping Mask. Babes, it is $24 for a tiny, heavy glass jar of what is essentially just strawberry-flavored wax.
Literally wax.
But when I apply it with that tiny little pink silicone wand, I feel like a billionaire's wife going to sleep in a silk sleep mask in a penthouse. I know scientifically it doesn't actually penetrate the skin barrier, but the sheer delusion of the aesthetic is worth the price tag.
And finally, the number 1 luxury scam we will forever fall victim to. The $40 Dior Lip Glow Oil. It is incredibly sticky. It does not last. You have to physically reapply it every 12 minutes or it vanishes.
So true.
But the exact moment you pull that heavy, silver-capped squared tube out of your purse at a dinner table, you are making a deliberate statement. You are non-verbally signaling to the room, I have disposable income and terribly poor financial boundaries. It is the Fun Me caviar of lip products.
I am literally adding it to my Sephora cart right now as you speak. I am the problem. I am the reason capitalism thrives. Babes, this has been the most chaotic, emotional, unhinged spiral of an evening, and we are so incredibly grateful you went on this journey with us.
From the psychological warfare of tipping iPads to the Machiavellian biblical warfare of reality TV foot washing, we have covered all the essential bases of navigating modern society. We want to thank the Snark Squad for hanging out through all the madness.
Yes. But before we let you go, we need your hot takes. We want you in the comments right now. First, what is your official stance on splitting restaurant bills? Are you aggressively defending the tap water orderer, or are you executing an equal split like a functioning adult? Second, has tipping culture gone too far, and do you also panic at the iPad screen?
Third, and most importantly for our immediate physical well-being, what is your holy grail chapstick recommendation? Save us from the beauty marketing scams. And finally, which cocktail should we elevate next with our blender?
Yes, tell us.
And as you think about all of that, I want to leave you with one final philosophical thought. When we perform highly public acts of humility, like washing someone's feet or filming ourselves doing a good deed, are we actually being humble, or are we just asserting dominance and making ourselves immune to criticism? Think about that the next time you scroll your feed.
Ooh, that is so good. Babes, remind yourselves to like, comment, and subscribe. We read every single comment. We appreciate your thoughts, and we love you so much.
And until next time.
Stay iconic, stay chaotic, and we will see us on the Snark side.